Well, good evening and welcome to Simone and Friends. I'm absolutely delighted to have you here in the audience tonight for what you might think of as the pilot season of Simone and Friends. Now, the reason I created this was that I felt that we were losing the art of conversation, the art of being able to connect more deeply with each other. And I thought it was about time that we started to have the kind of conversations that we used to have when we used to break bread together and we would take time out to really get to know each other. And so Simone and Friends was actually born out of the idea that we all have the capacity to be the change we want to see in the world. And the way that we can do that is by finding out what we each have, the gifts we have, the talents we have, and the capacities that we have to be able to shift the world from the old paradigm to the new. And it's no mistake that you are here in the audience tonight, because if you're here, it's because you too have a world-changing idea, and maybe you're looking for a platform where you can share that. So tonight I've invited some very dear friends to come and join me and to share in some conversations about the way that they look at the world and the way that they interpret the world through a very different, a very creative lens, a lens that allows us to be everything that we could possibly be. So my very first guest tonight is the fabulous, beautifully colourful Lisa Murray. Now, Lisa is a brand spanking new author of, this is actually her second book, of the most beautiful Living Beyond Burnout book, which is literally hot off the press. I think they just arrived a couple of days ago. And so tonight, Lisa and I are going to be talking around what that means. So let me just give you a bit of an overview about Lisa. So after 3 rounds of burnout, Lisa discovered a new way to prevent the chronic exhaustion that comes from overwork, overwhelm, and being overstimulated. Lisa's vision is to make work into a playful, satisfying adventure every day. Now, who wouldn't like more of that, right? If you have ever had a breakdown, feel like you're just holding it together, have lost your mojo, or are looking at your life and saying, there must be something better than this, Lisa's book, Living Beyond Burnout, is for you. It offers a system for preventing burnout and an invitation to transform fatigue and exhaustion by changing the underlying causes, as well as treating the symptoms that stop you from enjoying your life in all its magic and magnificence. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Lisa Murray, creative alchemist and author of Living Beyond Burnout. So Lisa, my very first question to you would be that most people who have gone through burnout would possibly consider that it's a life sentence. But you have a really different perspective on this, don't you? So let's start with you sharing a little of your story.
Thank you, Simone. Well, my first burnout was when I was 27, and I didn't know it was burnout. So I went, well, that job sucked, I'll go overseas. And so I did. And I came back and I was like, I'll just get another job. And I had no idea I'd even had burnout. And then the next burnout came. And I was like, I'm not feeling that great. I'll have a bit of a holiday. Same thing. Didn't know. And then there was the third burnout. And that was a little harder to ignore and avoid because I literally couldn't speak. I had no short-term memory. I couldn't really even stand up straight for that matter. You know, it was a pretty tough time. And at that point I was like, you know, this is kind of the third time I've ended up in this weird space. I better find out what's going on here. And of course you go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh, you've got depression, here's some medication. And I was like, well, thank you, but I'm pretty sure I'm not depressed. I still think my friends are funny, you know, I still like them. And so I didn't take the medication, but it did set me on a path to go, well, what is this? How does it work? How the hell did I get here? And, you know, that was about 9 years ago probably now. And a lot's changed in that time. And one of the things I think is really important to note is that people, when Simone said, you know, it's about, people think it's a life sentence, that is what all the therapists were telling me. Lisa, you're going to have to be careful for the rest of your life. Lisa, you're going to have to stop. Lisa, you can't do that. And I was like, well, let me just show you. Because I was not going to live that life, you know. I was not even 40 and they were telling me your life's over. And I was like, I don't think so. It's not how it works for me. So, yeah, it was a really different, I think, those people I think are quite astonished now. They're looking at me like going, how did she do that? And it's not a conventional path that I took.
So what were, you said that you obviously discovered some kind of strategies that that got you out of that. So can you recall what some of the early things were that you did?
Yeah. Well, you know, what's really interesting is that first year I went down very traditional paths of, you know, acupuncturists and, you know, all sorts of different therapies. And it didn't take me very far. And so then I actually saw a psychic. And she said, well, you know, you've lost your creative energy. You just need to get your creative energy back. And I was like, oh, okay. And of course, what happens though is when you've got to that stage of burnout, when you think about, well, what would be fun for me or what would be creative for me, it's like there's a blank page in front of you because you don't remember. It's so far removed from your reality that there's just nothing going on. And so in that very beginning stage, it was as simple as write down 5 things that are fun for me and then do one of them, you know. And this is where you start when you're in that space. But after a while, I mean, now it's become a much more sophisticated, playful, fun thing, you know. But in the beginning, it was very basic. And it was literally like looking for things for me that didn't have outcomes, because a lot of burnout comes because you're always looking for an outcome. You're always doing the next thing that will give you an outcome. And to actually go to the space of just playing with something or exploring something for the pleasure of it rather than the outcome is a very different space. And if you're ever tired, try that instead of just sleeping it away. Sometimes sleep is awesome. Other times it's actually another part of your being that is looking for stimulation or for an input.
So am I hearing you correctly in that when we deny an aspect of ourselves, like our creative energy, that it is something that can contribute to that sense of burnout or to, and in fact to the recovery of when we reignite that creative energy?
Yeah, totally. I would say to you that the things that you use to prevent burnout are also the things you use to treat it. And basically, if you have, and when I say burnout, I'm using the term fairly loosely, okay? I'm not necessarily using the clinical term of it. It's more about if you are constantly tired, constantly fatigued, constantly really wishing your life was different to how it is, it's that what I would call really a burnout of the soul, you know, where you're just like just going through the motions, but you're not really here, you're not really enjoying your life. And yes, so the creative energies is one part of it. You actually also have to look at what you need to change. Because, you know, I do remember one of my big turning points in getting better was this guy, I was telling him the story about it, and he goes, well, what do you need to change? And I just looked at him because no one had asked me that. And at the time, it's funny, I can't remember now exactly what I need to change, but at the time it was really clear to me. And I was like, oh, I'll change that thing. And what I realised in looking back was every time I'd had the burnout, there was something big that I needed to change. And I think it's really a wake-up call. You know, some people choose cancer, some people choose, you know, there's all sorts of different things that you have as your wake-up call. Burnout was mine. And it took me 3 goes, but I got it in the end.
So while you were going through that, I know that you had some very unusual symptoms. I remember you telling me about, there was something to do with, was it chocolate? I think that was when your mum actually offered you some chocolate and you actually couldn't understand what she was saying.
It was terribly embarrassing. Like, I have been a chocolate addict my entire life. Not so much now, but back then, like, you know, a family block of chocolate a day was a family normal thing. And my mum, I remember this one day, she looks at me, because for the first 2 weeks after I quit my job, she came over to my house every day just to check on me, I think, because I think she was a little concerned. And she's like, would you like some chocolate? And I remember just looking at her and saying, what? What did you say? Because literally there was nothing in my brain. All the things weren't firing properly. And I couldn't comprehend it. So you can see why I had to quit my job. And yeah, and you know, it's a very interesting space to be in because all of your reference points disappear. All your habits disappear. And you're kind of in this space of, well, what now? You know, and you have to actually be very present because you've got no past because your memory's gone. And you're too tired to think about the future. So you're literally putting yourself bang smack in now.
Yeah. So living in the current moment is obviously a big part of what helped you move beyond those first stages of burnout. So what else worked for you, and I'm sure you cover it all in the book.
I do cover it all
I'll
in the
get you.
book. Yes.
I would love you to share a little bit of it now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, there was really four main things, and I do talk about them in the book. So one is the change, and literally looking at the moment-by-moment choices, because what I saw was a lot of those choices that I was making weren't making me very happy. They were all what other people thought I should be doing. You know, there was a lot of should in there, basically. And what I noticed was, well, if I moved that out of the way and started to look at what I really desired to have as my life, it was a totally different life, you know. And I would also say that at the time when I had the burnout, Simone, I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew it wasn't what I had, you know, and it was quite an evolving process to get to that place of what I wanted. So the change in the choice is very important. The nurturing and self-care. Now, I was not the best at self-care. Let's just say that.
Okay.
I was a little resistant to the idea of self-care. I'm like, what would you want to do that for? I'm busy, I'm doing things, you know. And now I look back and go, why have you been writing the book? And, you know, I've got to say, this is the book I've written 5 times. It's had 5 different names, and I'm actually happy with this version. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
It's, yeah, one of those things. It has a website of its own. It's not quite up yet. It'll be up in the next couple of days, and it's just livingbeyondburnout.com, so you can find it there. And I guess, yeah, my request of anyone who gets to see this is literally, if you know someone who maybe is heading in that direction, if you can head them towards the book, you know, not only would I be grateful, but they probably will be grateful. Because honestly, I don't wish anyone to go through what I went through. It was not a very fun time, you know. I can laugh about it now, but yeah, really it wasn't fun. So if you know someone who, you know, could benefit from it, if you know anyone who'd like me to speak about it, I'm happy to do that too.
Yeah. So the official launch is when?
The 29th of November
29th.
Online, and then I think we're going to do a Noosa one on the 6th.
Okay.
So we'll do a live adventure in Noosa. I'm still in the throes of working that one out.
Okay,
So,
fantastic.
yeah.
All right. So I'm sure if people have any questions, they might come and speak to you in the break. And but in the meantime, if you'd like to find out more about Living Beyond Burnout with the awesome Lisa Murray, would you please thank Lisa for joining us?